The world held its breath as the sleek, otherworldly ships descended from the sky. At first, there was silence. Then a hum. The sound reverberated through cities, even as the ships slowed to hover above the ground. Across the globe, millions of eyes turned skyward. People gathered in parks, rooftops, and stadiums, watching in stunned awe. The ships, immense and shimmering, had arrived, hovering over major cities like New York, Beijing, London, and Paris. The atmosphere was electric with uncertainty. Emma Hayes sat in her small office at a university lab in Chicago, watching the live feed on a holographic display. She wasn't scared. She had spent most of her life preparing for the possibility of first contact, studying alien life theories and analyzing signals from deep space. But this moment, this was different. The ship hovering over the city wasn't like the speculative ships she had imagined in her textbooks. It was a sleek, metallic behemoth, beyond anything Earth's engineers could conceive. Dr. Hayes, the government's calling for experts in xenobiology and astrophysics, her assistant said, breaking Emma's reverie. They're setting up a committee. They want you on it. Emma blinked. She'd worked for years to get her name recognized in the scientific community, but she hadn't anticipated her first real moment in the spotlight would come so suddenly. And so, unexpectedly. Meanwhile, in a conference room filled with world leaders, diplomats, and military advisors, the Vrixian ambassador, a tall, crystalline figure with glowing eyes, addressed Earth's leaders. His voice was calm, almost soothing, as he spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, Earthlings. We come in peace," he said. "We have been watching your species for millennia, and we offer guidance, technology, and knowledge. In return, we ask for nothing more than your cooperation as we work together to elevate your civilization." The world leaders exchanged nervous glances, but the Vrixian ambassador's words held a strange power. His voice was smooth, and his tone exuded a sense of certainty that made it difficult to question. A wave of calm washed over the room as they listened to his every word. Emma, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had always believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but the Vrixians didn't seem like the benevolent beings they claimed to be. There was a certain detachment in their eyes, an unsettling absence of warmth. As the alien ambassador finished speaking, he raised a hand. "Allow us to demonstrate our power," he said, his voice cold and precise. Without warning, the skies above Chicago darkened, and a ripple of energy surged through the air. A vast holographic map appeared above the Vrixian ships, showing Earth's continents, climate data, and even human population statistics in real time. The crowd gasped, realizing that these beings, with their advanced technology, could easily dominate the planet at a moment's notice. The demonstration was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But Emma's gut instinct told her one thing: the Vrixians were here to observe, yes, but they were not here simply to help. The following days were a blur of official meetings, public speeches, and media frenzy. The Vrixians, with their calm and composed demeanor, easily charmed world leaders and most of the global population. They promised utopian advancements, cures for diseases, limitless energy, and technology that would eliminate poverty. To many, it seemed like a dream come true. Earth's most brilliant minds were invited to collaborate, to learn from the Vrixians, and to usher in a new golden age. But Emma couldn't shake her doubts. As part of the Global Scientific Council advising the UN on the alien presence, she had access to more data than most. The Vrixians were meticulous in their interactions, offering only what they wanted humanity to see. Everything felt too controlled, too perfect. Something about the way the aliens manipulated the flow of information unsettled her. Late one evening, after a long day of meetings, Emma sat alone in her lab, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she reviewed intercepted communications from the Vrixians. These transmissions were encrypted, but she had managed to decode part of them using an algorithm she had developed for another project. As she sifted through the data, her stomach twisted. The documents weren't filled with benevolent intentions at all. The Vrixians weren't here to help. They were here to observe, and then to judge. Hidden deep within their transmissions, Emma uncovered something chilling. The Vrixians viewed humanity as an anomaly, a species on the verge of technological advancement that posed a serious threat to the galactic order. They believed that humanity's unpredictability made them dangerous, and their continued development could destabilize the fragile balance of power in the galaxy. In short, the Vrixians were here to eliminate or control humanity before Earth could become a threat to their empire. Emma's heart raced. This wasn't just about peaceful coexistence. The Vrixians had been watching Earth for centuries, and they had already decided humanity's fate. To them, Earth wasn't a jewel to protect. It was a problem to be contained. And their offer of help wasn't selfless. It was a calculated move to monitor, manipulate, and ultimately suppress any potential rebellion. She sat back, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she had discovered. The world had no idea. They were blind to the Vrixians' true intentions. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door. She quickly minimized the screen, her pulse quickening. She wasn't sure if she was being paranoid, but she felt eyes on her. Her assistant, a young man named Alan, entered cautiously. "Dr. Hayes, you're needed at the UN," Alan said, his voice tight with anxiety. "They're expecting you in a few minutes. The Vrixians want to address the Global Council again." Emma stood up, the weight of her discovery pressing down on her. "I'll be there soon. But Alan, get word to the resistance groups. We need to move fast." Alan nodded, sensing the urgency in her voice. As he left the room, Emma glanced at the screen one last time. The Vrixians were coming closer to Earth's defenses. The battle for humanity's future had already begun, but no one knew it yet. Emma couldn't shake the weight of what she had learned. The Vrixians' calm exterior was a mask, and she had uncovered the terrifying truth about their real intentions. But the knowledge she held was dangerous. If the wrong people found out, it could cost her everything. She couldn't go to the authorities. The Vrixians were too powerful, and their influence over the world's leaders was already evident. There was only one option left. Her mind raced as she paced the small confines of her lab. She needed allies, people who still believed in humanity's right to choose its own future. As she stared at the encrypted data on her screen, her thoughts turned to a name she hadn't thought about in years: Captain James Blake. Blake had once been a decorated military officer, renowned for his sharp strategic mind and leadership skills. However, after a controversial mission that had resulted in the deaths of innocent civilians, Blake had been discharged and vanished from the public eye. Emma had always respected his courage, but his fall from grace had pushed him into obscurity. Until now. She had heard rumors that Blake had been secretly gathering a group of former soldiers and intelligence officers, all veterans of humanity's global conflicts. They were calling themselves the Echelon, a resistance movement determined to fight back against alien influence. Emma knew if anyone could help coordinate a counterattack against the Vrixians, it was Blake. That evening, under the cover of darkness, Emma met Blake in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place reeked of dust and disrepair, but it was the perfect location for their clandestine meeting. Blake was sitting at a table, his eyes scanning a map of the city, his weathered face set in grim determination. "You made it," Blake said, not looking up as she approached. "You're the last person I expected to see here, Emma." "I'm not here for small talk," Emma replied, her voice firm. "We've been lied to. The Vrixians don't want peace. They're here to destroy us." Blake's eyes narrowed. "You're sure?" "I've seen the evidence," she said, pulling up the decrypted files on her tablet. "They've been observing us for centuries, and now they've decided we're a threat. They want to eliminate or control humanity before we become powerful enough to challenge them." Blake leaned back, his mind processing the information. "So they're not here as our saviors. They're here as our jailers." "Exactly," Emma said, her fists clenched. "But we still have one thing they don't: the unpredictability of the human spirit. If we can organize, If we can think outside the box, we can outsmart them. Blake studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You've got guts, Emma, and that's exactly what we need." A sense of determination filled the room. They weren't alone in this fight. Blake's network of former soldiers, hackers, and resistance fighters was growing, and with Emma's expertise in alien technology, they could mount a real challenge against the Vrixians. The fight for humanity's future was about to begin. As Blake and Emma shook hands, the first whispers of rebellion spread through the dark corners of Earth's cities. The resistance had begun. The Vrixians had underestimated humanity's capacity for resilience, and Emma knew it. The aliens had assumed that their superior technology and advanced intelligence would easily quell any opposition. But what the Vrixians didn't account for was the unpredictable nature of human ingenuity, especially when cornered. For weeks, the resistance had been laying low, gathering resources and gathering intelligence on the Vrixians' movements. Emma, now a key figure in the underground network, coordinated with Captain Blake and the Echelon, using their guerrilla tactics to stay one step ahead of the aliens. The fight was just beginning, but their victories were small but vital. They were learning, adapting, and testing the boundaries of what the Vrixians thought was possible. But despite the initial successes, the alien advantage was undeniable. The Vrixians controlled Earth's most vital systems: power grids, communication networks, even the very satellites orbiting the planet. Every time the resistance struck, they faced a swift and overwhelming retaliation. Vrixian drones patrolled the skies, their artificial intelligence systems monitoring every corner of the globe. The resistance had been careful, but it was only a matter of time before their movements were discovered. Emma sat at a makeshift command center in an abandoned underground bunker, staring at a large map of the city. Her fingers moved over a digital tablet, scanning through encrypted Vrixian communications they had intercepted. The Vrixians were meticulous in their operations, calculating every possible move, anticipating human behavior with unnerving precision. "They're predicting our next moves," Emma muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. Blake, standing nearby, eyed the map. "Yeah, they're good. Too good." Emma clenched her jaw, refusing to back down. She had always prided herself on outsmarting her opponents, and she wasn't about to let an alien force dictate humanity's fate. They had the technology, but they lacked the one thing that made humans dangerous: the ability to think outside the box, to act without logic, to break the mold. "We have to stop thinking like them," she said suddenly, her voice sharp. "They're playing the game by their rules, but what if we change the game entirely?" Blake raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking?" Emma's eyes sparkled with a mix of defiance and determination. "We can't beat them with force, but we can mess with their systems. They depend too much on their AI. If we can disrupt their data streams, confuse their algorithms, we might get a chance." Blake nodded slowly, understanding the plan. "If we can take out their command center, we might cripple their ability to track us. But it's risky. The Vrixians will retaliate hard." "We've already seen what they're capable of," Emma replied. "Now it's time to show them what we're capable of." The plan was born. A daring mission to infiltrate one of the Vrixians' key data hubs, where their neural networks were based. It would be a high-risk operation, but the resistance had no choice. This was their chance to level the playing field. Blake turned to his team. "Prepare for the strike. We move tonight." The night air was thick with tension as the resistance moved into position. Emma and Blake stood side by side, watching as their team of highly trained operatives prepared for the most critical mission yet. The target, a Vrixian command center located deep underground, nestled beneath the ruins of an old city, now reinforced with alien technology. It was a highly secure location, home to the Vrixians' Central Processing Unit, the neural heart of their global surveillance network. Emma's heart raced. The odds were stacked against them, but this was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. If they could take down the central system, The Vryxians' eye would be paralyzed, allowing humanity a fighting chance to strike back. This mission could change the course of the war. Everyone knows their roles. Blake asked, his voice low and steady. The group nodded in unison. It was a diverse team. Engineers, hackers, former soldiers, and rogue intelligence officers, all bound by one common goal: to fight for humanity's survival. Tonight, they were more than just a resistance. They were humanity's last hope. The operation was set to be executed with the precision of a clockwork mechanism. While Emma and Blake led the main assault team, a group of hackers would infiltrate the Vryxians' data network to plant the virus Emma had created, a virus capable of shutting down their AI infrastructure. It was a delicate process, and they had only one shot to get it right. As they approached the command center, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The Vryxians' defensive perimeter was formidable, with energy barriers and drones patrolling the area. The resistance had gathered all the intel they could, but nothing could fully prepare them for the sight of the alien fortress. Emma's mind raced as she analyzed the building's architecture in real time. "We've got 5 minutes before the next patrol comes around," she said, scanning the intricate blueprint in her head. "We need to get inside now." Blake gave the signal. Without a word, the team split into two groups, one to provide a diversion, the other to breach the command center. Emma's group moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by the sound of the wind whistling through the deserted streets. They used shadows to their advantage, slipping past the Vryxian drones as they silently approached the central vault. The diversion worked, momentarily drawing the Vryxian attention away from their target. But just as Emma's team reached the command center's entry point, the sound of Vryxian reinforcements echoed through the air. The AI must have detected an anomaly in their data flow. Blake's eyes narrowed. "They're onto us," he said. "This just got a lot more complicated." Emma felt her pulse quicken, but she wasn't about to back down now. "Get to the terminal," she shouted to the hackers. "We need to plant that virus before they close the systems down." The team rushed forward, and in the chaos, Emma could only hope that their careful planning would be enough. As the hackers plugged into the central network, the Vryxians began to close in. Their light, mechanical footsteps grew louder, more threatening. The fight was just beginning. The tension in the air was palpable as the seconds ticked by. The resistance team had reached the central terminal, but the Vryxians were closing in fast. Emma could hear their metallic footsteps echoing down the hall, their drone's sharp, clicking sounds filling the space. They were swift, and they were relentless. There was no turning back now. Just a few more seconds. One of the hackers, Rhea, shouted over the comms, her voice strained with concentration. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, the digital interface flashing in rapid succession as she worked to insert the virus into the Vryxian system. Emma's eyes darted toward the entrance. The Vryxian soldiers would be upon them any moment. Blake and the others were set up in defensive positions, weapons drawn, ready to hold off the incoming forces as long as they could. But Emma knew they wouldn't last forever. If Rhea didn't complete the upload in time, everything they'd worked for would be for nothing. "We're almost there," Rhea shouted again, sweat beading on her forehead. "I just need a..." A loud crash interrupted her, followed by the unmistakable sound of a Vryxian drone's laser cannon firing. The ground beneath them shook, sending tremors through the building. The first shot tore through the concrete wall near the entrance, narrowly missing one of the resistance fighters. "We don't have time," Blake shouted, his voice hard with urgency. "Get that virus in now, Rhea." Emma's heart was pounding in her chest. The Vryxians were faster than they had anticipated, but they couldn't afford to panic. They had one shot, and only a few seconds left. Blake turned to her, eyes locking with hers. "Emma, we need to cover them." She nodded, taking the deep breath. She could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on her, but she pushed it aside. She wasn't going to let fear take over. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Ready," Rhea finally said, her voice low but determined. She slammed the final key, and the screen flashed with green text. Upload complete. A cheer erupted from the team, but Emma didn't have time to celebrate. The Vrixians were almost through the door. The first drone, a hulking, armored sentinel, appeared in the hallway, its glowing red eyes scanning the space. Blake and his team opened fire, the sound of gunshots filling the air as they took cover behind columns and makeshift barricades. "Fall back," Blake ordered, raising his weapon as he fired at the drone. "Get to the secondary extraction point now." But the command center wasn't the only place under siege. The Vrixian defenses were beginning to overload, their AI system faltering as the virus began to take effect. The resistance had succeeded, but the Vrixians weren't going to let this attack go unpunished. Within moments, the air was filled with the sounds of multiple drones deploying. All of them headed straight for the command center. Emma's heart raced as she grabbed a weapon, taking up position beside Blake. They had to move quickly. With the virus successfully planted, the battle wasn't over, it was just beginning. "Retreat. Now," Blake shouted, and they bolted from their positions, running down the darkened corridor toward the secondary extraction point. The battle was far from won, but they had struck a blow to the Vrixian power structure. Now, humanity had the upper hand. For the first time, the Vrixians weren't the ones controlling the game. The resistance was in full retreat as they sprinted down the narrow, dimly lit corridors of the Vrixian command center. The sound of alien drones closing in on their position echoed like a death march, but Emma kept her focus sharp. The virus had successfully destabilized the Vrixians' central AI, but the real challenge was escaping alive. Blake led the way, his instincts honed from years of military experience. "Keep moving. We need to get to the surface," he called over his shoulder, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. Emma's legs burned as they ran, but she didn't dare slow down. Behind them, a series of loud explosions rattled the walls. Vrixian drones were setting off defensive charges, trying to cut off the escape route. With every passing second, the risk of being trapped grew exponentially. The virus had done its job. But now, the Vrixians would be hunting them with everything they had. They'd reached the extraction point, a small access tunnel hidden beneath a massive steel door. Just as Emma stepped through, a series of bright flashes filled the corridor as drones fired their energy weapons, narrowly missing the team. "Hurry," Blake shouted, his voice cutting through the crackling noise. "We're almost there." With one last effort, they'd burst into the open air. The familiar city skyline loomed ahead, a sign that the surface was just within reach. But their relief was short-lived. As they emerged from the tunnel, the sky above them crackled with energy. Several Vrixian ships hovered overhead, their engines humming with malevolent power. The battle was escalating faster than anyone could have imagined. The moment the Vrixians realized the resistance had successfully uploaded the virus, they had activated a global alert, deploying their ships and ground forces in retaliation. "Move, move, move," Blake barked, urging the team toward the extraction zone, a dilapidated building several blocks away that would serve as their temporary safe house. But just as they reached the street, a barrage of energy blasts struck the ground around them, sending up plumes of dust and debris. The Vrixians weren't just on the defensive anymore. They were fighting back with overwhelming force. "We can't outrun them," one of the operatives shouted. "We need cover." Emma's mind raced. They had gained a foothold, but they weren't prepared for a full-scale assault. She pulled out her tablet, quickly sending a coded signal to their allies, the scattered resistance cells across the globe. The moment was critical. They needed to rally humanity for a global uprising. The Vrixians had been complacent, believing their advanced technology would subdue humanity without resistance. But what they didn't understand was the will of the human spirit. They hadn't just awakened the resistance, they had awakened a global movement. "Blake," Emma shouted, clutching the tablet in her hands. "We have to broadcast to the world. The resistance can't just be a few pockets anymore. We need to unite every nation, every faction." Blake glanced up at the looming alien ships and then back at her. "You're right. If we're going to win this, it has to be global. We strike together, or we don't strike at all." And with that, Emma tapped into the network, broadcasting the Resistance's message to every corner of Earth. "The Vrixians are not our saviors. They are our oppressors. Humanity will fight for its freedom." For the first time, the world stood united, and the Resistance was no longer a hidden movement. It was the spark that would ignite the fire of global rebellion. The world had heard the call. Emma's broadcast had spread like wildfire, igniting a revolution that transcended borders, languages, and ideologies. From every corner of Earth, resistance cells began to mobilize, rallying together to fight back against the Vrixians. Governments, initially hesitant and divided, were now forced to take action. The resistance was no longer an underground movement. It was the voice of a united planet, and the Vrixians had underestimated the fire they had just set ablaze. Emma stood with Blake on the rooftop of their makeshift headquarters, staring at the horizon. The once clear sky now buzzed with the faint hum of alien ships, their ominous presence looming over every major city. The battle was far from over, but the tide was shifting. Humanity had proven it could stand up to its oppressors. "We've got them on the defensive," Blake said, his voice hoarse but resolute. "Their global network is in chaos, and their command structures are fragmented, but they're still powerful. They'll retaliate harder now." Emma nodded. "We've got one shot left, an all-out assault. If we can destroy their command ships, we can cripple their ability to coordinate. But we need every resistance cell in place for this to work. This is it, the final push." The plan was simple, but it required precision. Humanity had learned from their mistakes. Their guerrilla tactics had kept them alive, but now they needed a decisive blow. The Vrixians' command ships, hovering above key cities, were the heart of their military coordination. If the resistance could infiltrate and destroy the ship's power cores, the Vrixians would be left with no way to organize their forces. "Let's do it," Blake said, clasping Emma's shoulder. "No more running. We end this tonight." Across the globe, the resistance sprang into action. Teams were dispatched to various Vrixian strongholds. Fighters took to the skies in stolen alien ships, engaging in fierce dogfights with the Vrixian fleet. On the ground, resistance forces breached the alien fortresses, using guerrilla tactics to inflict damage where it hurt most. The final assault on the Vrixian command ships began in the dead of night. Emma, Blake, and a small elite team infiltrated the heart of the Vrixian fleet's control zone in New York. The city's skyline had been darkened by the alien ship's looming presence, but beneath the cover of darkness, the resistance advanced. They planted explosives on the primary command ship's power core, the heart of the Vrixians' global operations. Seconds before detonation, the Vrixians realized their mistake. They had been caught off guard by humanity's tenacity, their assumption that they could control Earth's destiny shattered. The command ships began to emit blaring alarms, but it was too late. With a deafening explosion, the core erupted, sending a shockwave that tore through the alien fleet. The Vrixian ships staggered, losing control, their once coordinated attacks breaking apart. Humanity's final stand had succeeded. As the debris rained down, Emma and Blake stood side by side, staring at the ruins of the Vrixian fleet. Earth was battered, scared, but free. The alien menace had been defeated, not by superior technology, but by the unyielding strength of the human spirit. They had fought for their future, and they had won. "We did it," Emma said quietly, a sense of awe in her voice. "We really did it." Blake smiled, his face weary but proud. "We didn't just fight for ourselves. We fought for everyone, for every person who believes that freedom is worth protecting." As the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting light on the shattered remnants of the Vrixian fleet, the world knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had fought back, and the future was now theirs to shape.